So, what's your
So yeah,
first reaction when you see liberal reacts to Tom Macdonald?
liberal reacts to Tom McDonald. I mean,
Yeah.
that's so subjective and it's such an open-ended question because obviously in the scheme of society, his music would be geared towards I don't like that whole two-party paradigm of liberal versus Republican and when it comes down to it, music is very subjective, is it not? I mean,
Yeah.
when you think about it, everybody's going to interpret the music the way they want to or how it applies to their own life. That's also how music can come through the ears for everybody. But it's funny because then I'm watching your videos and it's just like kind of pick apart because I do see it's like I saw both your reactions canceled and I think you also did fake woke and then clown world. I'm not sure you did clown world, and there was like
Yeah.
a couple discrepancies that I thought I saw because there's a couple of segments where you say nobody cares about Tom McDonald, or nobody's trying to cancel him, or he's clickbait. You know, he kind of says it in the song. It's like, how are you going to use his face to get views on your page, but you're calling him clickbait? Which at the same time, wouldn't you kind of be going into clickbait yourself?
Yes.
'Cause, I mean, you're critiquing him, so then you would agree with that. But
Well,
I
I think
do
the subject matter is a little bit disingenuous, and I don't think he truly believes exactly what he's saying based on his prior work before he blew up. But I think he purposely does these certain topics because he knows he's going to get a certain base of people to watch his music, which I said, like, that's okay. Build your base up. People want to hear the political stuff. If they want to hear at the beginning of every song, I'm not offended. I'm not going to be canceled. I mean, sure, that's an identity song focused towards a certain audience, just like another song or another artist might make music that's geared towards another set of people. But then I can disagree with what he says within that song. And about nobody caring about him and nobody trying to cancel him, I actually do think, like, cancel culture is an issue. Like, for example, I speak out against if a video comes out of somebody from 5 years ago of them screaming the N word, I'm very, very, very against them being canceled. I speak out against that all the time, but I don't like this victim mentality. Like whenever something is questioned, whenever like, hey, this might have a racist meaning to it, like the Dr. Seuss books. No one cared about that. This one company made a decision. We're gonna take a couple books off the shelves. We're gonna take this off, these kids books off for racist imagery. Starting that conversation shouldn't be something to get like really worked up over, in my opinion. But like I speak out
um,
against cancel culture in general.
I would agree with that. I do believe cancel culture exists. I mean, you can see my backdrop. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that's on my wall that would probably offend people already. Um, but in the scope of you saying that he's gimmicky or he's clickbait, I kind of see Tom as more of a linear kind of. That's just his evolution as an artist. I don't think that he's being disingenuous. I just think that's the route he took. It could be a little bit of both. I would give you some leeway there. You know, I've been listening to Tom for maybe a year and a half now. Obviously, you can see I Hangover Gang Forever and all that.
Yep.
Um, it's funny because I actually this is like the first shirt I ever bought of an artist ever in my life. I've never bought any merch from any artist in my life, but I think it's there's so many Tom McDonald songs out there. I mean, two albums on my mirror. I got two albums over there, so I've kind of dove into a lot of his songs. And at first, when I first listened to him, it didn't really hit me. I didn't like the hooks, but he grew on me, and it started just speaking. Tracks like White Boy, Hang On, The Hard Way, which is kind of tracks you can only find on his albums. He doesn't release everything on Spotify. So there's so many songs that people don't hear. It's like, oh, he's so repetitive. He's so this. Well, how long have you been listening to him? Like I seen in the thumbnail, you had Wannabe, which I think you had the label trash or grifter. I don't think he's a grifter. I think it's just his evolution as an artist over time. Because I mean, there's songs 7, 8 years ago that you can find that Tom put out. And I just think it's a linear kind of movement through time of his evolution of how he evolved as an artist and what he wanted to be or what he wanted his music to be about.
Well, from a
And
music perspective, I do hear a lot of in his old music. I hear a lot of like Little Dicky. I hear a lot of NF. I hear a lot of flows borrowed from these artists. And I don't mind that. Like, I don't like it when every white rapper is compared to Eminem from a musical standpoint. I agree his music has evolved, but he blew up off of songs And I think we can touch on these issues, and I really want to touch on these issues. Um, this idea that a lot of white people and a lot of white men in specific, these people feel like they're under attack in America, either by feminists. So we have a big debate between like Cardi B and stuff like that, like, oh, you must hate men, or if it's because of like racial justice stuff, like, hey, when you support something like BLM, are you saying you want to be pro-black or are you going to be anti-white? And I feel like his music attracts a lot of people who are looking at this like, hey, you know what? Right now in America, if you're a white Christian male or whatever, then you are a target by this woke mob. And I would assume, or I would guess that a lot of his fans do feel like that. Do you feel like that?
I would I would agree to a certain extent that things have definitely shifted. I mean, I've always had this kind of saying, um, like skin color does not equal ethnicity. It never has and never will. Like you can't just size somebody's ethnicity up just by looking at the color of the skin. I mean, like perfect example, I'm half Puerto Rican, but I'm pretty sure everybody looking at the screen assumed I'm straight European or white, which that's what I kind of my thinking takes me to. I feel like I'm a very balanced individual. And when it comes to like Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, if you want my straight up opinion on that, I think it's I think it's just a tool of division that the government, the media uses as a weapon against us. Because it's just dividing black and white. It makes no sense to me at the end of the day. It's like we they got us like it's like the old time. They got us fighting each other when we're just totally oblivious to the actual enemy, if you will.
I think we can hold both of you. So I think we can look at it as a class issue with which is like, the haves versus the have-nots, the powerful versus the powerless. And I think on top of that, like, if you're a poor white guy, you're gonna go through a lot of shit. You're gonna have to grind your entire life, and you're probably not gonna get that far no matter what. If you're rich, no matter what, you're probably gonna be successful no matter if you're black or white or whatever. So there is an element there of haves and have-nots, but I think there's another layer we can put on it when it comes to BLM. And I don't mean the stuff you see on Twitter. I mean the movement BLM, not like the organization or whatever, but the
Okay.
movement that's saying like, hey, there are certain things that happen, like Ahmaud Arbery or something like that. Why does it take so long to convict people who shoot a black guy versus if a white guy dies? Or if you look at like cops, there's a big study out of Stanford that shows that at night, a lot less black people get pulled over. So like during the day, if cops can tell if the person in the car, and I can send you this if you want, but if cops can tell if the person in the car is black or white, they're more likely to pull over black people. But at night, they can't tell who's in the car because this is racial profiling, and we see this in crime stats all over the U.S. Mainly, we'll see this somewhere big like New York, and that's where they might say defund the police. I don't agree with defund the police all over the country as a slogan or as a policy. But like New York City, their police budget is so huge. So you see like a huge tower of funding for police, and then you see no funding for like education and for housing. And a lack of funding for education and housing, these have nots. These people are fighting these conditions every day. People fighting conditions, whether you're white or black, are going to have a higher crime rate. So then you have an issue where it's like, why are we giving so much money to police and not giving enough money to our kids? And our kids are going to end up going to crime and get into these cycles of poverty because we're not giving them the tools necessary to be successful. So when I look at Black Lives Matter, there's going to be people to use it, in a bad way. There's going to be people to use it to cancel people. There's going to be people to use it like, hey, white people are evil. But when I see BLM and when I say BLM, I'm saying there are issues here that black people do fight. Like if I take a poor black person and a poor white person, that poor black person is going to get profiled by the cops in scenarios where that poor white person probably won't. Do poor and white, or do poor and poor black and poor white people, do they both suffer under like systemic issues? Hell yeah. That's not even debatable. I'm not going up to a poor white working class person and saying, "Hey, you have privilege." Like when I say white privilege, I don't even say that word because that's an academic term. They don't know how to talk to people. White privilege doesn't even mean you have it good. They're literally just talking at the point like, "Hey, if you're white over being black, there's certain things. There's certain things that won't happen to you. Like for example, that thing I brought up in with the cops and racially profiling. I don't know what you say about that, but
I would agree to a certain extent, and then I also kind of put it in my mind like we're dealing with the poverty in the neighborhood itself. Like, where do you? I mean, it sounds simplistic in saying it, but in more poverty stricken neighborhoods, wait, I can't hear you.
You good? You're good?
Uh,
No?
Oh, okay, yeah,
Oh.
my fault. I think it was a time delay because I'm watching from my phone. Uh, yeah, so I think it's like when you look at a poor white neighborhood or a poor black neighborhood, I think regardless, because poverty breeds crime to a certain extent,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. I would say there's more cops in a poverty-stricken neighborhood because there's more crime in those neighborhoods. It just seems like a cause and effect scenario with that. But I would agree that white privilege, along with the term woke, is so subjective. Anybody can say, "Oh, I'm woke," and I mean, what does being woke or having white privilege mean at the end of the day? It's just a fantasy term to me. It doesn't mean anything. It's just whatever that person interprets being woke or being or having white privilege.
Yeah, it's like there are so many things, like, even the word toxic masculinity, this is stuff dreamed about in a college classroom as a way to sort of evaluate society. So, white privilege and, like, if you ever heard of critical race theory, that
Oh yeah,
is to sociology what, like, calculus and trigonometry is to math. So they're, like, methods to evaluate, different sociological or, like, societal things. You can disagree with these methods, but I do agree they are used in a very, bad context most of the time. But when it comes to BLM, and you're talking and you agree, or would you agree that if your great grandparents are in poverty, do you think that gives you a higher chance of being in poverty? So your parents grew up in poverty. Do you believe in the cycle of generational wealth? Do you think poor people end up staying poor and rich people end up staying rich most of the time?
I would lean towards agreeing with that simply because it takes that one generation or that one family member in that generation to turn the tides. You
Yeah,
could
and
go
that's
from
yeah.
rich to poor and poor to rich in one generation.
In the U.S., we see a lot of stats versus other countries. Are you familiar with social mobility?
Social mobility. I mean, I
Yeah.
can kind of infer or kind of interpret that. Social mobility means like how easy it is for you to move through society or move up the ladder. Is that dealing with class?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like poor to rich,
Okay.
rich to poor. In the US, we're ranked like I think it's like 29th. There's like a global index where they study like how often people go from rich to poor or poor to rich. And we're like 29th in the world. So I look at that and I'm like, I want our country to have equality of opportunity, but we could get to that later. I want people to be as even as possible. So how hard they work, I want people to be judged by how high they have to jump to get somewhere, not how high they reach. If you're 7'6" and you could dunk, that's not as impressive if as if you're like 5'6" and you could dunk. If you start off poor and you jump super high, you're probably only going to be making at the max like 50, 60K if you get a pretty decent job in a lot of areas in this country, no matter how hard you work. But if you already start off in a family that's going to be sending you to a private high school and then to a private college, you're going to be making bank. It's almost guaranteed. So we do have issues with generational wealth in America. And what we see with black people in America, because black people were third, second, whatever class citizens, just MLK just got assassinated. What is it? 60 years ago now. Slavery just ended like 170 years ago. Like this stuff is pretty recent. Like somebody's great grandmother today was a slave. And that stuff isn't broken easily. It's like if you stab somebody in the back or you stab somebody with a knife and you take that knife out, I don't, you can't stab somebody and take it out and be like, all right, everything's better. You got to give that wound time to heal. And if you start a bunch of black people off in a very poor position, so they're in these communities because of like redlining. So banks won't give them loans to get houses outside of a certain area. So you condense all of these poor people who are black in a certain area. So you have all these poor people in a certain area. The property taxes aren't going to fund good schooling, so they get shitty school systems, shitty environmental health. The air is going to suck, air quality sucks, water quality sucks. Black communities in America have high amounts of lead in the water. That leads to a lot of issues for
Flint.
development in children. Yeah, just like Flint. Yeah, that's a prime example. But that happens all across the country in places we don't hear about. So we have all these issues condensing into one because of our country's history of slavery. And when we talk about like reparations, like 40 acres and a mule or whatever, You can debate on like what that is supposed to do, but that is the goal. Is to say like systemically, even if there isn't like directly a law today saying black people cannot be successful in America, we're still feeling the effects of, that systemic racism that was 100% ingrained in our society for so long. And like you were saying, poor areas are more likely to have higher crime rate. So these black communities are poor. They get racially profiled. They put cops into these areas instead of funding education, instead of funding health programs. So that cycle perpetuates. And they're locking up black fathers. They're locking up people for smoking pot. The criminal justice system is screwing over black people all over the place. So that makes it even harder to get out of poverty. So when I talk about BLM, I'm saying like, hey, we are all having issues because we're working class people. We're all poor people. But as part of coming together against the people that own our society, part of addressing that is saying, and this is what my opinion on it, part of it is saying, you know what, black people have a shitty go at it with another layer added on to already being poor. So like you know what I'm saying a little bit? Like this is my perspective coming up as a poor white person. And then if I was a poor black person, I just know from experience and from people I know. Like that's totally different and I know in the numbers. I don't know if you would agree or disagree with that. So when Tom says something like it doesn't matter if you're black or you're white. It screws the system screws us
Mhm.
exactly the same. That's why I
Yeah.
disagree with that. And I'm not gonna get this, this 5 minute rant out and all the nuances in this one reaction. I just can't do it. Especially when I'm not talking to people. So thank you, by the way, for having this conversation because a lot of people aren't willing to do this. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's why it comes off a little bit weird to people who are watching because they already think I'm like liberal coming in. I'm gonna start saying white people are evil and all that stuff. But that isn't the case.
See, I think to some extent when because from my point of view, like I threw myself into all the Black Lives Matter protests with Antifa running around, all the riots that were happening, and in the context, it's like it's interesting that we're talking about this, but we're basically two non-melanated dudes speaking on the black experience. I mean, I don't have that
But it's
experience,
not the
and sure,
experience. We just got
I
the
got
numbers, though.
friends. Which numbers?
I could
Like,
send you like the numbers I said about racial profiling at night with black and white people. The differences during the day, like cops pull over black people more. And even if we look at how many black people start off in poverty, I said in my video, I said 100%. I said black people have a 100% more chance to start off in
right?
poverty. And
I
by
heard that.
saying that, I meant it's around 2.5 times more. So if you are born in America and you're black, you are 2.5 times more likely to start in poverty than you are if you're white. And we can connect this directly back to systemic racism. And as we talked about, generational wealth doesn't just go away after one generation. That takes a long time to heal, especially if the government isn't going to be, if the government actually is actively doing policies that hurts your community. It's not about the black experience even. Like every black person is going to have a very unique experience in America. It's just
Mm,
about like I look at this government, what we can do, what we have done, what we messed up on in the past, and how we can fix that. So like I'm not even talking. I'm not trying to talk as a representative for black people or anything. I'm
okay.
just looking at it from a policy perspective.
So the thing with numbers is like, what's your source for the 100% of that may end up in poverty? 100% of black people that it's more likely. If
Here, if you look up like what percent of black people in America start off in poverty versus white people.
Well, it's just the numbers itself. I've never been a. I used to be a really big stat person, and then I started realizing all the sources, and especially like government sources, and then sometimes you pull up sources from like Statista, and it ends up the source comes from Wash Post.
So a state of work in
That's a lefty.
America. Based on U.S. financial stats, this is State of Working America organization. 45.8% of young black children under age 6 live in poverty, compared to 14.5% of white children, which is still pretty bad. But yeah,
What would be the cause of
45.8% of
that?
black children.
I
The
mean,
cause of
you
that
did
is
mention
like
the
being
fatherless
condensed into
situation.
when you talk about like redlining. So the bigger cities like New York, we could look at Baltimore, Philadelphia. These areas became primarily black areas when black people moved up north because the South was bad for obvious reasons. So once black people moved up, all the white people, this was called white flight, they moved out of the inner cities and went to the suburbs. That's why we had the like 90% white suburbs or whatever.
So it's
And
like a
redlining kept
gentrification.
black people in these condensed communities, which were poor. And if you're poor and you grow up only seeing poor and only being around poor people without any opportunity, you end up going into, you have no other option but to go into these certain lifestyles and to, you're going to have a higher crime rate in these areas. You don't have these issues in the suburbs. So if you want to look at systemic issues, redlining, and even the fact of like generational wealth. If you look at the average net worth of like how much money is passed on from black families to black families versus white families to white families. And I'm not, by the way, when I'm talking about this, I'm not talking on an individual level because a lot of people, if I talk to them, they'll be like, you know what, I'm a poor white guy. I don't get it. Like my life sucks. You're trying to tell me I have privilege. I'm just talking like if we take every white person and every black person, what percentages are there going to be of these groups that are in these positions? Because I don't want it to be an individual thing. We can talk about individual experiences all we want, but when we look at policy and BLM and what they're trying to address, and I know people, like I said, I'll say it over and over again. These people who are fake woke, who don't want to actually fix anything, they're going to use that as like a social thing. They're going to use that as like a social identity. Like I'm going to post my do you remember when everybody put up their black squares on Instagram?
Yep, I did
Yeah.
that
They
too.
everybody's going to do that. But when it comes down to it, are people going to say like, "Hey, and I don't mean you. I mean like people who are in the suburbs outside of these cities. Are they going to say, "Hey, I'm going to tax myself 5% more to help these inner cities get better schools"? Probably
Mm.
not. Everybody's going to say Black Lives Matter, but are they going to actually like address these systemic issues? In my experience, and it's hard to say it. Like if I have a lot of money, like why would I give money to these people who I feel just aren't working hard enough? But then my perspective is, as I've been saying, these systemic issues that have been happening over and over and over again. So Tom's message, I don't think it's inherently a bad one. I just think it's missing a little bit of depth. And he made the song "If I Was Black," where he gets
Right.
into this stuff a lot.
That's where one interpretation that I think I would like your interpretation because when I saw if I was black, I didn't really agree with the message myself. Um, I think it was a decent enough song. I mean, I'm big Macdonald. I love his music. I listen to his music every day.
Hmm.
But if I was black, I feel like he tried to step out of his shoes. Like he was rapping from the perspective of a black person if he was black. And when I was watching your reaction to it, it was more like you were saying, "Why is Tom saying that?" When in my mind, I was interpreting if Tom was black, he would be saying that,
Yeah,
but
but
he's not
doesn't
black.
that
So it was a kind of maybe I could say theatrical, but it was still I think he's deep.
but why,
I
if he was black, why wouldn't he be talking like Candace Owens instead? Like what makes him talk
he's
um
not Candace
well, I'm
Owens.
saying,
He's Tom
he
McDonald.
picked a certain perspective though to tell the story from either way. And I feel like his personal experience had to have informed that a little bit. He knows what it's like to be poor, and he talked
Yeah.
about cops and stuff like that. I think he definitely sees it as an issue. Um, yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's
I'm
what I
trying to
was
find out where we
interpreting.
can connect this. Because
That's what I was
do you ever
my
hear the
fault, go
word
ahead.
intersectional? Like, ever hear people like talking like that?
Yeah,
That's
of
another
course.
freaking academic term. I didn't even know what it meant until like a year ago. I'm in my I'm gonna be a senior in college, and I still didn't know what it meant. But that basically means like there's certain level or there's different layers of this stuff. So like for example, if you're poor and white, you can have white privilege but have poor disadvantage. If you're rich and black, you can have rich advantage or rich privilege, and you could be disadvantaged because you're black. It's not like a game to see who's more uh, who's more disadvantaged. Like I hear that a lot. It's not a game to be like, all right, who's worse? Oh, you're a black gay woman who is poor. Oh, you win the prize. You're the most. That's not what it is. All this stuff is really just an academic way to look through this stuff. But I'm sure
Mm.
even if you looked at liberal sources before, um, I don't know if you would hear what I'm saying right now because I don't know any people like on CNN or MSNBC. I disagree with them because I think they dishonestly portray these messages as well. I think their cause is to also make social conflict in a sense. Their cause is to represent it in a social way. But like my cause is making sure we address this all systemically. And if you want to talk about like Appalachia and coal towns and all these Rust Belt communities. I can talk about those systemic issues as well. Like I'm well versed in all this stuff. Yeah, I grew up in these areas. So it's like this is my approach to it. I just want to try to do the best I can to look at all the systems affecting us. And my reactions to Tom, you could probably tell a lot of it is like trying to get people to to leave funny comments. A lot of it is. That's why I make the thumbnails
I
like liberal reacts.
I
I look
noticed.
angry.
It's
Yeah.
clickbaity. It's like, yeah, but you're doing your thing, which is getting views, which is why I ended up on here to begin with.
Yeah.
Which it was funny because I'm like, wait, why is this guy calling Tom clickbait on the very song where he's
Or
saying
I'm
you're
using
using
clickbait.
my face, yeah, to get clicks on his page? A hypocrites are myths made. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to let
Oh,
that
no, you're
curse
good.
slip out.
No, that's fine. That's
But
yeah.
yeah, so it's just like, oh, why is he doing that? I'm like, but then I watched the other reaction. I'm like, wait, he likes some of the bars, some of the hooks, so he's a balanced guy. It's not like he's trashing Tom all over the place. He's got your good views and your bad views. But then it's like I saw your reaction to your own reaction of Clown World, and I'm like, you're like, how could people be so mad? I'm like, bro, you're doing a reaction on your own video. Maybe it's not, 1.7 thousand dislikes. Maybe it's like people not exactly don't care about Tom. They just don't care about you.
No, I thought that was
Because
funny though, because it's
it was
like
funny. Because I was like,
people
wait, what
got
do you
so
mean
mad.
nobody cares about Tom? You're doing a
Well, that's what I
reaction
was
about
saying.
Tom right now.
Well, I wasn't doing it to like cancel him or to like hate on him. I was just saying like this stuff is kind of dumb. Like I wasn't doing it and like I'm so mad right now. I can't believe he said that. And he gets millions of views and he only gets a couple thousand dislikes, which is good for him. Not that many people are mad at him, but I think he does let it get to him too much a little bit sometimes. Like he made that one song. What was it about? It was his like generic or not generic, but like his general response to, is it called No Response? That one song he made.
No
Um,
response.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
there's that track,
there's
No
not that many
Response,
people. I don't know,
where
maybe
he
he got
went
into a couple of
off.
things I don't know about. But it doesn't seem like there's any articles about like, Tom McDonald dangerous. Like Eminem back in the day, he had the government trying to cancel him and to can and um drown him out of the airwaves. I don't see
Right,
anything like that
and
for
the
Tom.
parents were too, but the
Yeah,
parents
yeah, the
were also
parents
because
too.
you had a lot of adults, like, calling on that stuff, which, I mean, it's
Yeah.
freedom of speech. People can rap. I mean, look at Cardi B, she raps about. I mean, I try to be consistent because in the '90s, look at what they was rapping about in the '90s, rapping about the same stuff. I'm 31 myself, like, I've been out of college for a very long time. So it's like I look at the '90s and I'm like, well, we had our kind of sexual, crazy,
Mhm.
druggy music,
Yeah.
but now it's like in 2021, there's sexual, crazy, druggy music, but we're older. So we're just like, I don't want my kid listening. I don't have a kid, but I was like, I don't want my kid looking up to Cardi B or Nicki Minaj or Rainbow Hair.
I don't think she sees herself as like a role model. I think she said that too. My thing
Yeah,
is, my
yeah,
whole thing about it is like you said it. If you know about rock, if you know about country, if you know about any of these genres, like Lil Wayne in hip hop has a song called P Word Monster. He has like 50
yeah.
songs
I remember that one.
aggressively and very descriptively talking about sex in the same way and maybe even deeper in some ways than Cardi B's song is. And you can say like Cardi B's song blew up. I mean, I wouldn't punish her for success. I don't like these messages anywhere. I don't like the over sexualization of this stuff anywhere. But I also think I think it's a liberation type of thing. Like, um, when Cardi B says this stuff, forever it was okay for guys to say it. Like every rap song I heard growing up, people were saying that. Every rock song, my family used to listen to Kiss at every at these
Mhm.
cookouts,
Yeah.
because I live in the a coal area in Pennsylvania. Like that was Kiss. That was Headstrong by Trapped. I can name a bunch. What's that one band called? The Sound of Madness. Who made that song? Shine Down.
Let's
Like
see.
Linkin Park. Like all these people. Linkin Park didn't talk about that stuff, but like Shine Down and all them, they were all rapping or singing about this stuff from the perspective of a man. But now a woman's doing it. I don't see why it's such a big like issue for a woman to do it. You could say in general, like I'm speaking out against everybody that does this, but my only
Oh,
problem is like Tom speaks out against rappers who are doing like drugs and stuff, but he never says like these men gotta stop talking about their dick size or something like that. So like I feel like it should be on
well, I
both
mean,
sides.
in Sad Rappers, he did call out the rappers that were all rapping about drugs. What's the other track? Damn, man. Now I'm trying to recall a track because I'm also watching your chat, and it's kind of entertaining. I mean, Erica says, like, "God forbid girls look up to sexy women." It's not, in my opinion, it's not her about being sexy. It's her about. I mean, if you look at the background of Cardi B, she was a stripper. I mean, so what? She was a stripper. People got to make their money. But then she would take Johns into the hotel rooms and rob them,
Oh yeah,
and
that's
then
bad.
leave.
Yeah, I think that should have been spoken
So
out against
yeah, I
more.
don't want my daughter looking up to um that. I mean, it's not nothing to do. She's a beautiful woman. She's sexy. It is what it is. But it's also the personality. It's also what she did in the past. I mean, I could go on and on with that,
Well, that's what I wanna hear
but
about then. I don't wanna hear about her dancing on stage. I wanna hear about, like, hey, she literally admitted that she would, like, drug men. If this happened in the reverse, if a woman, or if a
go to
man drugged a
jail.
woman,
She'd
yeah,
be in
like,
jail right
right
now.
now, his career would be over. He wouldn't go on to have 4
Huge double
more
standard.
he wouldn't have 4 more number 1 songs. I think she has another one called, like, Up or something. That's a number 1 song. Yeah, you could definitely criticize her on that. I just wanna see that, though. I don't wanna see and Tom could go into that, and I would respect that more than just saying like maybe that's what he meant when he just said our girls are looking up the Cardi B. But if you say girls and not just people looking up the Cardi B, I feel like you're suggesting that the issue is women being sexually liberated, and I don't, I don't get down with that type of thinking. But like the other stuff that you just brought up, definitely.
I mean, see, it's like I'm reading the chat at the same time, and I like the chat is balanced too, at the same time, and that's why I could go back to music being subjective, and everybody likes their own thing, like WAP. If I had a daughter, a 12-year-old daughter, I wouldn't want her listening to WAP. I would just want her being a kid, running around on the playground, not thinking about sex. Which that's another systemic issue, I think, in our society is kids have been too sexualized. They're
I
coming
think
into sex way too early where they don't need to be thinking about that type of
I
stuff.
think one of the issues there is there's not enough education on it though, too. Like when they see this stuff, they're like for example, if you're like a girl or a little boy growing up, and you get no education on how to properly approach like sex and like going through puberty, and the first thing you hear is either Lil Wayne rapping about it or Cardi B rapping about it, you're gonna get a little bit of a distorted view on this. So,
That falls back to parents, in my opinion. That would fall back to the responsibility of the parents to educate them. It
but I
has nothing
think,
to do with the government. Like, I don't want the government involved in raising my future children if I decide to have children.
but it
I
seems
don't want
like
the government
the
involved with the school involved either.
It seems like a lot of the people speaking out against what she's doing also speak out against like proper sex education. Like we can see there's an example in a really religious area, I think in Utah. Um they tried not telling kids about sex whatsoever. It was a really religious like fundamentalist thing. They tried not telling these kids about sex at all. And what they basically saw was a heightened rise in
Real.
pregnancies, STDs and all this stuff because if you don't learn about this, then you're gonna have far worse outcomes,
But
as you develop.
who do we want educating our kids about this stuff though?
But Cardi
I
B
mean, in my
isn't
opinion, it should be
educating.
the parent. Well, I mean,
If they
they're
stumble upon her on
interpreting or they're
YouTube,
absorbing that like WAP. What is there educational about that? Or what is there to gain from, say, a child or a 10-year-old listening to WAP?
I
I
don't
mean,
know why
she's
a 9 or
gonna
10-year-old's
emulate
listening to rap anyway, but
because parents don't care. They're on their phones, no parental controls being used, and they're just absorbing all this stuff like a sponge.
well, yeah, if that's
So
your criticism, then it's not a Cardi B issue. It's a parenting issue then. Like say, hey parents, teach your kids about
it's
sex.
more
Don't
so.
like this isn't all it is. And I feel like the sexual liberation movement, there's sex positive feminists and then another group of feminists. There's so many and wait, what's your opinion on feminists by the way?
I don't. Feminine used to be like Tom said. Feminines used to be the most righteous of fights. Now I think they just secretly hate guys. Um, yeah, it's becoming a topsy turvy world where the third wave feminists. It's like they want to be guys now. It's like they want to take over the role of the man. Some of them, I'm not gonna say all. I don't think all feminists are bad or out of their minds, but to some extent, it's like especially if you come out to a feminist, okay, what about, male issues? What about completely dispel? They'll completely jump over the hoops, jump over the rope. No, men have no problem in the world. Men have it completely great.
That's
So
usually
I don't really go with feminism
that's called
because
a misandrist if they do that. You know, RGB Ruth Bader's or RBG Ruth Bader Ginsburg that just died on the Supreme Court.
Hmm.
So coming up, she actually one of the ways she was like a feminist icon, and one of the ways she made a lot of ground for women on certain issues is she actually brought up issues in which men are discriminated against. So like in family courts, for example, that'd be something that she would bring up, like, hey, men have an issue here too. So as a feminist, when even when they talk about toxic masculinity, um, some people, everybody has a different way to go about this, but toxic masculinity, as they talk about it, hurts men too. Like the idea that men don't feel that they can open up, the feeling that men should be carrying all this weight on their shoulders, the feeling that men should be emotionally closed off, like it's not normal for a man to cry, or the idea that women should be 100% just baby makers and then baby raisers. That is
Hmm.
something that hurts men too. That idea that women
Yeah.
should only be the ones raising kids, because then you go to a child court and you see that 90% of, or whatever the number is, like more kids are going to single moms no matter what, and dads are getting screwed out of it even if they deserve to see their kid more. That's something that a lot of feminists will address. That is something that is like the patriarchy. That's one way that
Mhm.
this stuff can hurt men as well. And some
I,
people who do call themselves feminists, I do agree. Their idea is hating men. There are people on Twitter who literally go throughout their entire day and they say, white people evil, men evil. I hate all of you. If you even try to change or if you try to speak on these issues, I don't even want to hear you. And I don't think even if you hold those positions, I think that's just a bad tactic for communication.
See, that's where I can agree with like the RGB though. She was an old school feminist, but now you have the new school or third wave that has kind of fundamentally changed, in my opinion. I'm not speaking facts. I'm not claiming facts, but they've changed what feminism used to be and have morphed it into completely something different. And it's interesting because I see the chat, and that's what I like to do. I like to go into the lives, and when I debate, I also like to read the chat. I hope you don't mind.
You're good.
um, I heard somebody mention Trump. I don't know where Trump come from. I hate to break it to you, but I didn't vote for Trump. So if you think I'm some Tom McDonald Trump guy, sorry, but you missed the mark. Just speaking to the chat, not to you. But it's funny when you come to we come to the societal issues, and everybody has their own idea of what can solve it. And at some point, we're so divided. It's like no one can agree on anything. No one can agree on a solution. Like like sexual education. I mean, when I grew up in middle school, what was it, sixth, seventh grade? I was in sex ed, but it was teaching you how to put a condom on. It was teaching you the anatomy. Like here's the vagina, here's the penis and testicles. It was more of not about gender and inclusivity and all this opinionated drive of like, how can I put that into words that make sense?
You can
It
say
was
you disagree with the social identity surrounding it. Like, I don't care about addressing these issues. I care more about making a point than actually making progress on this stuff. And I can resonate with that a little bit. Like, if your main goal is to virtue signal talking about certain issues. But one thing I want to ask you though on these issues. So like BLM and like feminism and all these things are social movements
mhm.
that we seem to be conflicting over. So like and you agree with some of what I'm saying about like the systemic racism and how even if there's not a law that says black people are evil or black people shouldn't be able to buy a house, there's still things that affect them in this system to some extent. Like we can debate on what extent you agree with that or disagree with that, but then like on feminism we can agree that there's some good aspects of it that you agree with, and some people use it in the wrong way. So instead of like saying like perhaps saying like you're anti BLM or like anti feminist. I just wish more people were like, I'm pro good
All right,
feminism or I'm pro
all right.
like.
Hold on a second. All right, Marty Boxwell. You don't know me from a hole in the wall, my guy. Like I really don't tread on me is not indicative of Trump. American flag is not indicative of Trump. It's just America, my guy. See, like that's the type of person that will size me up on face value without getting to know me, without talking to me for 5 minutes, and then assume the worst of me.
Mhm.
I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for him in 2016. So I clear that up real quick because that's where people like that, it shows a very closed mind. That's why I like to get into a debate. I like to open minds, like to shake it up a little bit. So I mean, in the aspect of systemic racism, I would venture to say that a lot of systemic issues have died down outside of criminal justice. We need a hell of a lot of criminal justice reform, which is, you see my backdrop against all enemies, foreign and domestic, woo, and don't tread on me. Like that, speaks to the Constitution and Bill of Rights. I believe everybody has their constitutional right, black, white, purple, polka dot. I don't care. Like we all have our rights, and we should all unite with that. But when you come with systemic racism, it keeps pushing. In my opinion, it keeps pushing the divide. That's like CNN, Fox, and all these other talking bobbleheads. It's like the recent mass shooting in Atlanta. It was reported that the guy even stated it wasn't racially motivated. He was a sex addict and flipped out. How true is that? Was he lying? I don't know. But immediately we go into stop Asian hate. Like,
That's also because of a
and
heightened
coronavirus.
hate crime from COVID for the past year. But when I have to move you
Yeah,
out of
I
the channel and
see.
back in really quick because you're clipping a little
Okay.
bit. So let me just see if I can fix this 1 second.
Marty is hilarious because he's saying I'm lying. What am I lying about? Like, Marty, what am I lying about, my guy? And what am I being dishonest about?
All right, mine is
Have fun with the chat. I'm sorry. I love having fun with the chat. Because if I see somebody call me out, I'm going to respond to them.
Very good.
And if Marty wants to know, or if Marty cares to know, or thinks I'm lying, I really don't care either way. But yeah, I did not vote for Trump this election. I'm registered independent. I consider myself libertarian. I voted for Joe Jorgensen, Marty. Who did you vote for? You're so progressive. You probably voted for an old rich white guy, Biden, that you claim to hate rich old white guys, but still voted for an old rich white guy. I voted for a woman. How progressive are you? All right.
Hey, Biden is doing the stimmy for the economy. I like that bill that just just came through. But
Jorgensen was going to do the same thing.
well, I
Jorgensen,
interviewed her. She wanted to abolish the government, which is a topic I want to talk about.
uh,
Um, I
abolish
actually
the
did interview
government.
her. Yeah, she wants to get rid of the government completely. I interviewed her before.
That's not libertarian.
But
I never said what interview
you can I'll send you
because
the link of
I
when I
watched
interviewed
a
her.
lot of her interviews.
Yeah, we could
Because
talk about that then. But
she wanted to abolish certain departments, certain agencies, but abolish the government flat out. That's anarchy. That's not libertarian.
well, okay, what's your general view on government? Do you think more government bad and less government good typically?
Yeah, yeah, and I would be more right leaning for that.
Okay. So my view on the government is I think the government needs to be very strong. I think it needs to be a powerful government, but I think it needs to be owned by the people. So when our country first started, we had a big crisis. And this crisis was between the shadow government and the real government. So the shadow government represented every powerful entity that we had no vote in.
Mhm.
So every big business like Amazon and Walmart would be that today. The shadow government. We can't vote on what Walmart does. We can't vote on what Amazon does. Although Walmart owns my where I grew up, my local economy. It wiped out half the businesses. We can't do anything against them without the power we have with our vote with a strong regular government. So a government by the people for the people that works on behalf of the people. My issue isn't with government. My issue is with bad government. I think we need a powerful
Okay.
government, but the ownership of that government needs to be for the people. So for example, if Amazon and Walmart, if they use their money that they made in the private market, if they use that money to influence the government, they're rigging the game because the government is the only tool as people that we have to organize and have power against these entities. Just like Teddy Roosevelt and trust busting, making sure no monopolies form, all that kind of stuff. So my whole thing about the government and how I think we need the government to be people owned. It needs to represent people power. And that's why I support politicians who don't take corporate funding, and stuff like that, who don't have corporate interests. That's why I did support Bernie Sanders above all else. I think his policies were a little bit too idealistic to actually get done, like the Medicare for all and stuff. I do think we need
Yeah.
like universal healthcare in America. I think he moves our country in the right direction economically. in my opinion. But the big thing to me is government needs to be for the people, and that's what our founders felt as well. That's one thing that you can use to prevent tyranny is having like the Senate and the House be used to represent the people. But what we see right now is they're passing bills people don't like, and they're not passing bills that people do like. Like
Yeah.
marijuana, for example, is something
I
like
was just
holy
about to
shit.
say that.
Like that's taken so long to get done, and people
And
have
people
been
want
for
it.
that for like 15
Yeah,
years now, like by a big majority. It's
that's what
crazy.
it's obvious that our government is being controlled other than we the people. It's explicitly cannabis legalization because we people have been asking for it for years and they're just not giving it up when it's less damaging than say alcohol. I mean, how much medical that goes into the medical debate too. And how much money are we spending to treat cancer or all these diseases like liver failure, kidney failure? To treat people who have become alcoholics and destroyed their lives over alcohol, but you're not going to legalize marijuana. And that's another thing, like we're all adults. I think whoever wants to inject or drink or smoke whatever they want into their own body, that's their own choice. They should have the right to do what they want with their own autonomy. And that goes back to having the shadow government control everything, which it kind of brings up the question is what does the government really want? Do they want the best for the people? Of course not. Because if they wanted the best for the people, which is why I can't understand why they just don't legalize it. They can make hand over fist in taxes back from legalizing cannabis.
They need bargaining chips. They need something to say
Yeah.
like, "Hey, we did something for you."
Yeah.
After all this time, and that's the big thing. That's why I think, like, for example, say there was no government, say there were no regulations on corporations. Right now, Amazon and Walmart would be owning everything. They'd be making our laws
But
for
see,
us. They'd be making
that's
like if we had no government protecting us in a sense. Like, what's stopping Amazon from like making their own mercenary force? They can afford it. They have a higher
they've
GDP than
tried.
some countries. I mean, they
They've
probably already
tried.
do. Yeah, Amazon has their own CIA that
They're
is
getting
meant
into
to
government
prevent like
contracts.
yeah,
Like Google. Google was trying to get into military
well,
contracts and
Google
the
has
employees were
everything.
like,
Yeah.
"Mm."
Yeah,
But
so yeah.
that's where I could say, like, because I kind of felt like it was gonna go this way. I kind of felt like you and I were gonna agree more on disagree. Like, besides Tom's music, you know, be that I like Tom way more than you do, I
Yeah.
assume. But yeah, it's like I think to a certain extent that we the people have forgotten what our true power is in a capitalist society. If we want to destroy Amazon, the only thing we would collectively have to do is stop buying from them.
But
But
that's
it's
not going to
such a
happen.
damn yeah, it's such a damn good idea. They're worldwide. It would it would take nothing short of a miracle to get people to stop buying from Amazon, me included. I ordered shit from Amazon the other day. I'm no better. You know, but it's like that's where we kind of forgot our true power. Stop buying from companies that you don't like. Stop buying or funding. Stop funding. See, well, that's the whole hand in hand fist because we're getting taxed by the government and the government puts the money where it's want. We don't get an itemized bill of where the government puts our money,
Mhm.
but the government wants everything itemized about us. But
Yeah.
yet, if we don't pay the government, they send what men with guns to our house and put us in a cage. If we want our money from the government, well, you're SOL. I mean, that's where it's like to the point of a powerful government. Where do we decide that we should take some of that power back?
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah, I don't
what's
want
the
to make the
answer to
government
that? Because I don't
smaller
know.
per se, but I want to make it more controlled by us. So like
Well,
I'm not really a
to have more.
socialist or capitalist. Like I don't really rep either system. I want a better form of capitalism. A lot of people
Well, it's
want to
been
call it
hijacked.
like a lot of people want to call it like super capitalism. So it's like a new version of capitalism where like everybody has more of an ownership in certain things. So for example, Amazon, like Jeff Bezos and all the owners of Amazon, we don't have a vote in anything but, like I said, our government. We can't vote on what Amazon does. But one good thing to do would be to get worker representation on corporate boards. I think that would be pretty cool if like we had a couple like every worker from Amazon would like vote for a representative, and each corporation needs to have somebody that speaks for the workers on those boards. Like
But
I think that's
wouldn't
one
that be
policy
like a
that'd be cool.
union?
It'd
Wouldn't
be
that be
sort
sort
of
of
like
like
a
a
union,
union?
but it would give workers more of an actual just like say in what the company actually does, not just bargaining power between unions and the company. So like a union sort of bargains, they use their collective labor to bargain. What
Uh-huh.
this would do
Mm,
is give workers a fundamental ownership and make companies more of a democracy because we don't have a say in that. And if we're not
yeah.
going to come together collectively to like I'm all for worker power. That's my big thing. I want workers to have more power. I want poor people to have more power. I want regular people to have more power, and I want elites to have less power. So that's what I'm looking at. Like, what policies can we do to accomplish that? What can we do to fix capitalism? If capitalism is going to be producing so much, like monopolies are able to become monopolies because like once you're Amazon or Walmart and you grow to be so big, everything you produce is going to be cheaper because you have the means of production over and over such a wide grasp, and you can just produce things at a much lower cost than small
Yeah, I
businesses
mean
can.
that's a perfect example. I mean, Amazon
Mhm.
has its own clothing brand.
Yeah, and Amazon, by the way, people, entrepreneurs, these people are making new products in capitalism, innovating, and they sell a product on Amazon. And because our patent system is messed up in the US,
Oh,
Amazon
it's
makes a
so
copycat
screwed
version of
up.
their product. So these entrepreneurs are getting their products stolen from Amazon or stolen by them from Amazon. Or stolen from them by Amazon, god damn it. Uh, stolen from them by Amazon, which is a very scary thing. We need to fix
Oh,
capitalism in these
yeah.
senses. And capitalism is going to produce a lot of shit. America produces so much money that other countries don't have. But once we produce that money through capitalism, I think as a people, we should be coming up with policies to say, like, hey, Amazon and Walmart, you're going to be monopolies. You're going to produce stuff at a lower cost. You're going to be using China for free labor and all that stuff. Basically slave labor. Some of that profit should go to us. So if we need our schools funded, it shouldn't be on property taxes. It should be a part of our entire society working together. This nation was built by workers. Without people fixing the roads, without plumbers, without teachers, without doctors, without police officers, without firemen, this country would not run. These people at the bottom should be having a direct say in what the hell is happening, not just people who are benefiting from the hard work of others, and just holding a microphone and pushing a button on a computer on Wall Street, making money off of the stock
So
market. I think that shouldn't be controlled by them. I think it should be controlled by regular people.
see, I mean, that's where I would ask you, do you think that's realistic? Do you think that we even have a chance of creating something like worker representation? Because I don't think we have a snowball's chance in hell as, the corporations themselves giving up that power and giving it to the
Oh, they're not going to
workers.
give it up.
I just don't think it's going to happen.
It
And
takes
then if they
pressure.
want to
Yeah.
strike, I mean, if they want to strike, these are low level skilled jobs. I mean, say what you want, but they can replace these people at the drop of a hat. Just put up, an application on Indeed, and they got a new worker on the spot.
Well, not if they
That's the
all
only
strike.
like.
So
I
okay,
mean, you got temp agencies
just
too. I
one
mean, one
like
call from
just
Amazon,
one
you got
test,
like,
one eye test for you. So Amazon is spending billions of dollars, and they actually spent money to organize their own CIA to prevent union organizing. And they're going on a big propaganda campaign to prevent union organizing. I think if Amazon could just hire new people, they wouldn't be doing this. I think there's a reason Amazon feels the need to spend billions of dollars. I think you're mad at chat right now, but I think, I think
no, I
there's,
was just responding.
okay. I think
I
there's,
take it in strides though. Ain't nobody getting me
do
mad.
you
I
think it's
believe what I
weird?
believe.
Do you think it's a
Believe
little
what
bit
they
weird
believe.
though that Amazon feels the
Well,
need to prevent unions so much if they think they can just hire
yeah,
new
of course.
people? Because they have to
Yeah,
prevent worker power. But like Amazon
that's
increased their
every
wage to
company though.
15. They need to like companies have to compete for labor too. So that's why they're paying $15 an hour. Amazon can't hire some random people who don't want to work. They do need production in their facilities. So these people coming together who know what they're doing is gonna get better wages. It is gonna get better healthcare standards for these people. But in general, like supporting politicians who say, I'm not gonna take corporate money. My big issue with Trump's economic plan was his tax breaks. Although I like the tax cuts he made for regular people, I don't like that 99% of the tax cuts went to the top 1% and added tons to our deficit. I think if we're going into debt if we are going to go into debt anyway, I think that debt should be for the people. It should be for $1,400 checks to our people instead of,
Yeah.
Amazon, who already controls the government, who they control the government and the private market, and now we're going to take out debt for them, us, the working people. We're going to take out debt for them. If we're taking out debt as a country, that should be freaking helping us, dude. I'm sick of them taking this money and giving it to the people who are already ahead. Like this
Yeah.
stuff freaking kills me. And that's when we talk about haves and have-nots. We might disagree on some social stuff, but if we see somebody coming through with an economic message where they're like, and not like Trump, because he literally just bent over for these big companies with his tax plan, but for somebody who wants to like, we're gonna tax the rich more and still cut taxes for the working class, or I'm gonna support workers and stuff like that. I want more politicians who are really clean, who are really just in it to be good and to
I
give
mean,
power back to the people, which is hard. It is hard,
I
but
don't I don't think I don't I mean, I might be a little bit of a pessimist, but I don't think there is such a thing as a clean politician. Not in any world does
well,
that would that
in a
exist for
sense,
us.
I think
A
to be a
clean
politician,
politician.
you do need to be someone who is decently involved in politics. You do need to be a little bit
It's the
edgy
hand
in your
washing.
approach.
It's the quick pro quo. That's what it kind of comes down to. It's because
Well, yeah.
Democrats are like, we want this. Republicans say, oh, we want that.
Well,
So you give me this and I give you that.
well,
And then it
Bernie
screws
hates
us in the end anyway.
like I think Bernie Sanders hates Joe Biden, but he still took the knee so that Biden could win, so he can get concessions. And I still think someone like him speaks, even if you disagree with him, his entire life he never took any corporate money. I do think he speaks
I
for the
used to be
people,
a Bernie
though.
bro. I used to be a Bernie bro, but then I started seeing his policies as not realistic. And
Hmm.
then some of the things he said in the past, like people standing on bread lines being a good thing. I could be taking that out of context because it was a clip, but when I heard like people standing on bread lines is a good thing, how?
I think he was
In what
comparing it
world?
to the people were literally not eating before. So the breadlines, they took it out of context like the media likes to
Okay.
do. It was
Yeah.
like this
Okay.
system that the government put in place here, this socialist system, technically is better than I don't like this argument, and I might be not fully informed on which clip you're talking about, but it's like the same argument that we use. Like, hey, if we weren't taking slave labor from this country, then they'd be in a worse condition. I think it was sort of like that. Like this government, although it's authoritarian like Castro or something, when he talked about Castro being good for like education and stuff, he was literally saying there are some aspects of this that are good. I think it's terrible optically to say that. Like I'm not gonna say like you know what Hitler had a pretty good student lunch program. I'm not gonna say that because overall he had a bad influence and it's terrible for like optics and shit, obviously. But I think he was making a calculated principled defense of his ideas because technically these were like universal systems. That's what I assume he was doing and what you're talking about. But like in his actions today, I don't think you would really get that from what he says. He talks like working people standing up. He wants to have like a Jeff Bezos tax. For example, like in my community, um, a lot of people are working at Walmart and they're still on Medicaid, or they're still, Walmart is getting their workers' healthcare paid for by the taxpayers. Walmart, I think, should be paying their own taxes for their workers' healthcare. And stuff like that. I don't like that. Like what? Walmart can come in, kill my businesses, and then they're gonna make us pay for their workers. Like I don't
See,
like that at
that
all.
goes that goes back to competition though. America, like capitalism's always been about competition, and that would just go back to saying, you put your dollar where you want to support it. Me, I shop local. I go to all my local businesses. I barely go to all the big boxes. Like if I'm going to a hardware store, screw Home Depot and Lowe's. I'll go to my local owned business, and that's where I could kind of, because I don't agree with socialism. I mean, when I came up, I was told that shit never worked out. Everyone tried to try it and it didn't work. And people say, "Oh, but what about Venezuela? What about Norway? Oh, but they're not traditionally socialist. So why are there no socialist countries right now? But it can work here, right? Because America is so good at everything. We're number one at everything that we can
Well,
make socialism work just fine. A
I would look
okay.
at it as like certain
Mm,
policies though, not like socialism. Because what do you really mean? Like every economy is going to be a mixed economy. So
that's true.
like
I would agree. We have social policies, but look at the policies. Like, is it well
like
socialist
Medicare
policy?
is
And how
pretty.
garbage is Medicare? How garbage is
I don't
the
know. It has
public
pretty high approval
education
rating for
system?
people that are
I
on
mean,
it.
mm,
But like, what do you think
I mean,
about the
I'm on
idea?
Medicare. I'm on Medicare in my hospital that I need surgery. It might be anecdotal,
Are you Medicaid or
but
Medicare?
I think
Because
shit.
Medicaid is if you're
United Healthcare Community Plan.
So Medicaid, it would
out in
be
New
like a
York.
state thing. That'd be more for people who are like
Well,
working class and younger. If you're
well, I
over
said,
the age of 65, then you get enrolled in Medicare. So you're probably on
yeah.
Medicaid,
So
which has issues.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's free. I'll just say my healthcare is free, but that's because I'm pretty essentially broke myself. Like, yeah. Enough about that. Yeah, so it's like my I need surgery on my left shoulder and my left wrist for torn ligaments, and the hospital where I went to did surgery on my right because I had torn ligaments in that as well. That hospital kicked my insurance company out, so now I'm SOL. I don't know where to go to get the rest of this fixed. So I mean, in the terms of the free, like nobody, no hospital or doctors want that insurance because they can't make money. So it's like a balance between that. It's like you're kicking out my insurance company when I need to get my stuff fixed. It's like I thought you were about helping people, but obviously that hospital is more focused on money. The
Well, that's
doctors
why
are
we're
more focused
ranked
on money.
in the US, we're ranked like 27th globally for our healthcare system. We have the most money and we spend the most money per person, but we still have the worst outcomes. And I know people bring up the argument like the US has really good specialty people for healthcare, like specialty surgeons,
Hmm.
but I'm like, sure. If there's a certain procedure that's very, very rare or something, and you need like cancer, like a cancer treatment, for one, you need to be rich. You're not going to get this special treatment if you're a poor guy. Um, but for the 99%, and this is why there's overall better outcomes in other countries, for the 99.9% of people who don't need these extremely specialty procedures, these other healthcare models, like Canada has a lot of issues, but like Australia is a mixed model between private and public.
Hmm.
Germany is a mixed model, Sweden, like all these countries have a universal model of some sort, and they're ranked above the US in healthcare because if you do it for profit, the uh what's it called? The incentives are bad if you do healthcare for profit. Because you want all money going into healthcare to go to helping people, not to go for like an insurance company just making money. So these public
We'll see.
systems end up doing better all across the board. And like you said, your hospital doesn't want to take that insurance anymore. That wouldn't be an issue somewhere else because they wouldn't be operating for
Right.
profit. And also, even if you
But
have your
then,
own insurance, there's out of network costs that are associated with
right.
all this stuff.
Yeah. But then I also do have the choice to go somewhere else that does accept my insurance. It might be lower quality, but I'll still get, the care I need, or I'll still get whatever the ligaments repaired either way. you know it is, I guess it goes back to the quality of the physicians that is supplied. But if I get fixed at the end of the day, I would rather take that than the government telling me what doctors I can see or what procedures I can have.
But they don't tell you what
And,
procedures you can have or what doctors you can see in universal models. Like
well, I mean,
you literally just got told which doctor you cannot see because of the current system.
well, see, but that's what happened with Obamacare. He promised everybody, oh, you can keep your doctor, your premium will stay the
I'm
same.
not for
And then
Obamacare.
for some people it skyrocketed, and then they couldn't keep their doctors. So I mean, and whenever government gets involved in anything, I immediately question it and I immediately get skeptical about it because I don't trust the government. And I'm sure most people would agree with that statement. Is I mean, I don't trust the government for anything. Anything they want, and the media, that goes the same way. So it's like when it comes down to Medicaid, I don't want the government being in charge of what I can and cannot
But
have.
if it's a company, they're in charge instead. Like you don't have a vote at
But I
all
can
in a
go
company.
I can go to I can go to another company. I can't go to another government.
But if you organize with a bunch of people, you can actually influence the government. If you just can't afford healthcare, these companies will be fine. Like these companies are happy that you can't afford healthcare because you'll be crawling right back, spending too much money. And
But
it's an inelastic market. So like, you
hell yeah,
can't
I question
decide
the
if you can
DOT.
get healthcare or not. You can't decide if you want to get I mean, I guess you can just let yourself heal in a very bad way and never be fixed. But they're kind of holding the gun to your head. Like either you pay up or you don't get care. And in my opinion, healthcare and again government I think should be as people ran as possible. So if I have 10 people and we all put $10 into a hat and we're like, hey, um although all of us cannot afford our own healthcare, we're gonna all put $10 into a hat as like an emergency fund. If one out of us 10 people gets hurt, we're gonna use that $100 for like whoever gets hurt. We're gonna have this
Okay.
big pool of money, and this pool of money is gonna be what we draw from. Hopefully, we don't all get hurt because we're not gonna be able to afford it. But this is how insurance works. Everybody puts money into a pot,
Uh,
and whoever needs help from that system. We need healthy people in insurance. to make sure we can pay for the people who get sick. What happens with private insurance companies, and this isn't the same with every market or every company, they provide literally no service. So what happens is instead of 10 people coming together and having their own private fund of $100, um, these 10 people come together and they give an insurance company, they give this company their $100 that they all put together. And when one of them needs help, instead of going into the money they put in for healthcare, this private insurance company takes their money, holds it hostage. And then when people get hurt and need that money, they say, no, sorry, you can't get this money back because of a pre existing condition or something.
Right.
So I think
Pause.
all money put into healthcare should be for healthcare. It shouldn't be for a company to make profits. I think it should all be for healthcare. I don't want my dollar being cut in half because half of it's going to go to some corporate board somewhere.
Let's
But I
see.
do understand having issues with the government because it isn't controlled by the people right now. That's why I fight so hard to make sure we get good government programs that have a lot of oversight. For example, in like PA right now, like our Medicaid program is pretty good because our people made sure to vote in politicians who were going to make sure that they're going to be resolving their promises on that issue. So we have a decent
Let's
program
see.
here. So that's my goal overall. And like you said, it is hard. It is very difficult, but I still want to influence it in a better way whenever I can. Like this stuff, I agree. Like it sucks. Life sucks. But like, I still want to be pushing
I
in
don't think
that
it's all bad.
direction. You know what I mean? Sort of.
I don't think it's all bad. I think it could be worse.
It can be
It could
worse. I
it
mean,
could be a lot
true,
worse.
true.
But I mean, that's just from a personal perspective, very anecdotal statement, if I do say so myself. But I kind of, is that not very idealistic thinking? Because in my opinion, I mean, money corrupts. Anybody comes around money, greed. It comes a lot with the human condition, in my opinion. Like that saying that absolute power corrupts absolutely. It could be
Sure.
anybody. We could have a pool of money with our own workers. You're gonna have one guy maybe dipping their hand in that pot when they shouldn't be. So the oversight, it's like who's going to be the watching the watchers at some point, because it's like you're always going to have that one person or this little group of people that want to get over the other group. And that just goes back to like what I mean, dominance hierarchy, or
Yeah, but
it seems I would say like my point is just it seems more idealistic than realistic, and that's kind of my thinking. I try to keep myself centered around what's realistic versus what's not, what sounds good, and then what we can actually make happen.
my state rep, if I organize enough people and I say, if Medicaid is a big issue in our state, and I say to this one state
Mhm.
rep, like, hey, if you don't do this, if this politician is good or bad, I don't really care.
Okay.
They can be a shitty person or a a good person. Politicians listen to power. So we need to organize enough power on the outside, and this is
Right.
difficult, but to influence that change on the inside.
I would
So
agree. Like to the point where
yeah,
we can say to a politician, "Hey, you either do what we want, you carry out
or we
our
vote you
will,
out.
not your will, or you're voted out." That's where I agree immensely with
Yeah,
that. We
so
need
on
to come back to
Medicaid
where
and
we actually
stuff,
have some power.
that's how Pennsylvania had got a really good a really good Medicaid program. It took a long time, but over the years, every politician that did it in a bad way, we are the oversight to make sure our government runs good. And I
Yeah,
agree,
I would agree.
it's not people are represented enough, but like when it comes to the local scene, national politics, it's
Mm.
a big reality TV show. People
Yeah,
talk
yeah, it
about that
is.
all the
I mean,
time. It's a fun topic. We don't, it's important to vote in. It's important to pay attention, but the real change happens at the state level. So like every politician I vote for or I speak on, I want
I
to make
would
sure
say
they're
it's
doing
smaller than
better.
that. You can go to the county level
Oh,
and
definitely,
the
sure.
town level. That's where everything should start. We need to go back to the ground base of local and start, city council. Start voting out these city council people that just don't have the will of the people and they're doing whatever they want to do.
Yeah, like yeah, in general, I'm trying to think of another topic I wanted to hit
No,
on
see, I think there's
because I'm
some,
trying to
yeah,
connect
some
this
of
a
the
little
chat
bit.
is misunderstanding me. No, it's because it's like some of the people in the chat are saying, "Oh, then don't challenge anything." I'm not saying don't challenge the status quo. The status quo kind of is, it kind of sucks. It could be much better. Like I'm not saying don't challenge the status quo. Of course we need to, like, and yeah, I mean, who would disagree with money corrupts? I'm not saying let's not give unions power and let the capitalists have it all. See, this is where maybe some of the people in the chat, because I know you said it before, like our capitalism has been hijacked. We don't own our capitalism no more. The elites control it. In my
Yeah, we
opinion,
need
we
super
live in an
capitalism.
oligarchy. We live in an oligarchy where the elites control everything hand over fist.
Yeah, that's why I think we need more democracy with like a more a system where it's like better capitalism, where there's actual
I think,
competition. Like actually,
but
if
I
you
think
work harder, you get ahead. If you don't work hard, you fall, or something like that.
so. The one thing I would be for with that is term limits. 110%. We need term limits for Congress and Senate. And another thing, we need all this special interest or all these lobbyist money out of politics. Like all the money that like what CPAC or APAC or the whole alphabet or Amazon donating to a campaign, or I'll say like Soros donating to a campaign. We need all this garbage special interest money out so we can get our power back. We the people, we don't have money power. We have people power. We have speech power. And we can vote people in and out the way we want. But when they have all that money, it makes it very difficult to do that. But see, we don't live in pure democracy, Nicole. We live in a constitutional republic. I mean, yeah, your bells and whistles want to go off with that. It's just facts. We live in a constitutional republic mixed with democracy.
Do you think more
Just
democracy
because
would be a good thing?
I would stand a little bit cautious with that, just because in my opinion, it's not a brand new saying. It's not like, mind blow, whatever. It's like just because 50% or 51% of the population wants something doesn't mean that the 49% should have to go along with it. Like that's where I go with libertarian. Like I'll leave you alone, leave me alone. We can get into the debate of I don't know, just because I value my Second Amendment right, you don't want to carry a fire, you don't want the Second Amendment, fine, just leave me alone. Leave me to my stuff. I'm not
But how
hurting
do we make
anybody.
sure
I'm not doing
Amazon leaves
anything.
us alone, or that Walmart leaves up, or Walmart leaves us alone if we don't have a good enough democracy, so we have that like protection for regular people? Like by
Well,
ourselves,
the only
without
the
government in
only
place, we don't have any rights. Like without the Constitution, we don't have any rights, and without the government,
right,
we don't have any
right.
rights because we can't collectively organize and say, "Hey, this is the people's government. We need to take control. We need to make sure Amazon doesn't stomp us." So I feel like you sort of have, and I don't know if you feel this at all within yourself, a little bit of a conflicting view on it, where it's like, I want to be left alone, but I also think we should
Right.
come together. But I'm not sure what the right way to do that is because it seems a little bit idealistic to do so. And even if we can come together, I don't know if it'll work because some people are a little bit crazy. But
That
also,
doesn't mean
our country is pretty complicated. So like we need to work at local levels, but also, there's so many things conflicting. So yeah. uh,
I don't think it means we shouldn't try, but I also think we need to be very careful about what we're stepping into, because America's been left leaning and leaning more and more to the left for a very long time. And look at the Democrat controlled cities. What's going on over there? Poverty is increasing. You got more rights violations in those cities more than, the red states. Or, you can come at me any way you want. I'm not blue or red. I'm very much in the middle, which is why it probably does seem like I have some conflicting ideologies, because I'm a balance of both. I'm a balance of left and I'm a balance of right. I do think we need social policies or socialist policies, but I don't think we need to be socialist as a country, if that makes sense. Does that make
So
sense?
you don't want, okay, you don't want socialism, right? You don't want like
Like
socialist
full blown.
people,
I
but you
would prefer to
want.
keep, like, if we go to socialism, would we keep our constitution and, First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, and rah rah Constitution,
Probably. I think socialism, what it would do is, so socialism means the means of production are owned completely by
corporate
the
owned
workers. So
cities.
that doesn't,
Interesting.
yeah, like that doesn't sound, you don't like the way socialism sounds. But how did you feel about the like super capitalism I talked about? Did you think that's a little bit better, like improving on the current system, making it more people owned and using, the production of capitalism to help regular people more?
Yeah, I
And
think
like
we
putting workers
do
on corporate
need
boards and stuff like that?
corporate workers on corporate
Or like
boards.
regular, so
What would be a corporate worker?
if you
Like
work
an
for
executive?
Amazon, yeah, so corporations have boards that vote on what a company is going to do. So what this would do is give the workers representation on these boards. So if the company wants to make a big wage cut across the board, then the workers would have a vote in what that company does. The workers would have an actual stake, an actual say. It would make it more of a democracy within the workplace. Do you think that would sound better than socialism? Not socialism, but more of like a better, a better capitalism. More, because I think that's more fair. Because we want competition, right? We want real competition where people can't just be in some high off land, of the elites away from us. So if we want real competition in capitalism, we should both have a role in making decisions within this, private market, and also we should be getting the benefits of it. Even if I'm a plumber
I would
somewhere or
agree.
like so a
I mean,
little
I
bit.
would agree. I don't see that as a bad thing. I would definitely prefer worker representation rather than not. I mean, the people working for the company should have a say, and that would be, I would say, a good thing is give workers stock options. Like if they're working for a company or working for a business and they're in the stock market, give the power to your employees to buy stock options or to buy, to get into the stock market. This 401k nonsense with companies is kind of garbage, if you ask me. If we're going into something of that topic, I'm not sure if I'm following or if I'm going off topic here.
It'd be better if I had a I don't have any examples pulled up right now, but of like
I
what this
feel,
would
yeah,
do.
I'm
It
trying
isn't
to
like
figure
worker
if my
ownership, but
well, yeah, I'm trying to figure out if maybe like my idea of giving employees stock options and having them, buy
well, what
stock
about
within
a
the
general
company
stake in
would
the
be,
company just in
yeah,
general? Like if the company does good, employees benefit. If the company does bad, employees stay the same basically. Like as being an employee here, you make your wage, and then if you're productive and our company grows, you have a you see what I want. I don't just want people to make money off of a company's growth. I also want them to make um decisions and be able to control what happens to them, because it's sort of like a mini dictatorship within some companies. Like
I like the sound of that.
in my community, if Amazon and Walmart are the only two businesses and maybe a couple grocery stores, and they all pay 15 bucks an hour, they all offer the exact same benefits, then like great, I'm choosing to work for one
So,
company that just has a different uniform and I'm making the same exact way, same exact everything. It's sort of like a
mhm.
mini dictatorship. I want more freedom for people. So if they had to say like, "Hey Amazon, um our worker representative wants to take our issue to the corporate board, and we should get 15 minutes more on our break, or we should be able to take another bathroom break, or we should be able to have if we work overtime, even better benefits, or we should be able to I don't know, maybe we should have a company newsletter where workers can share their experiences on the job. Like we want a representative for the workers. Do you think that would be something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, I would say the more worker representation, as you're putting it, I would be for. Of course, to have more safety in the workplace.
Hmm.
Uh, not the whistle of discrimination, because I don't think companies can't even get away with that anymore with like discriminating in any way, shape, or form. But to have the workers, I'm trying to formulate this, and I see Durka in the chat too. It's Durka's making me laugh because it is what it is. I see now my mind is going to so many
No
different
matter what you
places, and
say,
I'm
Rev,
trying.
you
I'm
have a
trying to.
team you're on. It's the I'm not on a
Yeah,
team.
which is totally inaccurate. I mean, I'm on my own team, which I don't think is a no team. I'm just I'm just me. I'm gonna live the way I want. I don't want people messing with my rights. I would prefer we have a way not different. I'm good with capitalism, but like I said, see, I don't want to keep repeating myself because we don't own our capitalism anymore. We haven't for the longest time.
Hmm.
We don't have any control, which is why I do agree with you that we do need worker representation to where it's effective. We can get the CEOs or these executives that are getting $100,000 Christmas bonuses for doing nothing but sitting on their asses. But at the same time, it's like how can we implement that? Do we get all the workers together and strike as usual? Like, because then at the same time, workers need their pay. So if they stop working and they got mouths to feed, at some point, wouldn't
Um,
they need a system to prop them up? Like, if we could get workers to strike, but then have a pool of money for the workers to sit on, kind of like a Aflac. Like, if we could get a strike going,
Hmm.
and then have a pool of money where those workers can feed off so they can strike
So
for
they
a longer
can
amount of
strike.
time,
Yeah, that's a big
and they could
issue.
still feed their families, and they could still go about
That
their
prevents
daily lives.
striking. Yeah, we need like a big fund, like a mutual aid
That
fund, right?
that would be
So
a good
people
idea.
can
See,
strike correctly and they can
that's what
actually use, yeah, their labor power to get more concessions from these big companies, make it more
yeah,
free.
this
So
is what I
like,
like.
yeah. So
That's what I
in
like this
taking,
debate,
yeah, so
just
this is like taking
talking
back,
ideas.
yeah, like taking back capitalism. I don't know if you would want if you would want to call it like super capitalism or whatever. I don't know if there's a good word for it.
I'm try I'm
Maybe
trying to,
worker
because
powered capitalism. Would that work for you maybe? Worker powered capitalism? Because
maybe
right now
because
we're in elite capitalism.
I feel like we're kinda in super capitalism already, because everything is so
No, we're in
controlled, but, like,
capitalism. We're in like okay, let's say okay,
see,
because
in
you
my
think right
mind,
now
it's
isn't
not
real
capitalism,
capitalism.
but I don't think we're in capitalism right now. This is not what the founding fathers or the intended system of capitalism, how it was intended to work, how it was intended to operate.
Yeah,
We didn't
because the
have all
people were supposed to
these,
have actual power in their envisionment, right?
and also the overcomplicated tax code that we have. There's taxes for everything. I mean, this is like, what's the there's a tax. There's a ridiculous tax in New York. Now I can't even think about it. I
Somebody
can't even
said
recall if I
stakeholder
remember.
capitalism, we can call it. Like the
That
capitalism is
sounds right.
owned.
No.
So like, yeah, that's why I'm saying it's elite owned capitalism. We need worker powered capitalism. Nothing is really socialist or capitalist. We have mixed economies. But what we do
Right.
have right now is like an elite controlled economy. We can call it elite capitalism. I think we need capitalism
Okay,
for the
that's good.
people. So
Yeah,
elite
that
capitalism
was
should
better.
be turned into working normal person capitalism where there's actual competition. You're not guaranteed success if you're rich. You're not guaranteed to be poor if you're poor. All these communities, one of the most actually the two poorest areas, and this is why all the culture war shit sucks. The two biggest pockets of poverty in the US are the inner cities, the urban areas, and also the rural communities in the Rust Belt. So those two areas are the biggest pockets of poverty in the country. But these two areas are
Okay,
also the least likely to agree on how to solve these issues. A lot over BLM stuff,
definitely.
a lot over the feminist stuff, a lot over a lot of culture war stuff. A lot of these social issues, the social issues keep us from coming together to face like the economic stuff or fixing capitalism. um yeah, and that's one of my goals on this channel is to try and bridge that gap so we can get to working on the real stuff, but I also don't drop my principles like I said before, on BLM, on feminism and stuff. I still want to, and I don't know if you would agree or if you what is your take on my approach to it? Do you think my approach is more reasonable or
Yeah,
more effective than stuff you've seen?
I
Not
would
the
I would say
reactions, but
definitely.
this.
Yeah, definitely. But you also got to get the right people on it that are not going to be ignorant. They're not going to shout you down or scream at you or tell you that you're evil for your opinion. Um, if you're claiming facts, make sure they're facts and not alternative facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, the culture war is that's just another weapon that the government uses against us. Like that, and what we're doing right now, it helps, but at the same time, we're kind of doing what they want us to do anyway. Like we're just talking about it, which you need to do. You need to talk about it to actually get something to happen. But
But
then
we can
eventually,
agree
we got to
on
put
issues,
wheels in
right?
motion. Well, I think that's a big step, because at first I came in here, some people in the chat thought I was some Trump supporter, or they see the "Don't Tread on Me" and against all enemy. They think I'm a Republican, so that automatically gets seeded into their mind, and they pass judgment. Or I'm a Tom McDonald fan. Oh, he's an asshole. He's a sexist. And, you know, it, it it's like I like to come on to some lives and kind of break the mold, if you will, or kind of switch things up.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, this stuff is always fun for me. I'm always
Well,
good.
thank you for
And
coming
yeah, I
on.
would agree. Like, yeah, you're doing a pretty good job.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for coming on and being
Mm.
willing to have the conversation. Yeah, this stuff is never gonna stop being difficult,
It's
unfortunately.
not. You gotta
And
have the right
yeah,
people.
and in this
Like
Twitter world,
mature minds.
like we're confined. One line I like to use is we're confined in character, not only in tweets but also in people. And that's what we're really stuck in the social media bubble. Like, hey, I have a totally different Facebook experience from you. I have a totally different set of worldview principles from you. So like if I talk to a random person from my hometown, like I'm speaking a different language. I might be saying the same words,
Yeah.
but I'm speaking a totally different language. If I say to them, like the word, a lot of people that say white privilege don't mean they hate white people. A lot of people do mean they hate white people. But I think 99% of people from Appalachia or like from the coal region in New York and Pennsylvania and West Virginia, I think 99% of these people probably think I'm saying you're evil because you're white. And that's not what it is whatsoever.
Well,
And
I mean, I'm from New York, and I don't think you're evil.
all right, well, well, thank you. But yeah, that's what I'm
It
trying
might
to
be
trying
anecdotal.
to. Yeah,
But
am I
yeah, I mean, I
Antifa?
would agree with that. Nah, I don't think so. I mean, are
All
you?
right,
I
no,
mean, I hope not, because I don't want to get fired or
I'm
canceled or have like a
anti-fascist, but
lynch
I'm not
mob outside my
Antifa.
house.
All right, all
Yeah,
right.
I mean, yeah, there's the ideology anti-fascist. But yeah, I would agree. Like Twitter, I mean, that's why I like getting on a live and debating with people that I can see. Because you get into Twitter, you got 256 characters, you don't have facial expressions, you don't have tone of voice, you don't have nothing that can help a debate like see eye to eye with people. Because you're arguing with a picture. You're arguing with somebody typing words that so much is lost in like a Twitter debate using 256 characters.
Mhm. Yeah,
Like you can't get to the level that you and I have got to in the past what hour and a half.
yeah, yeah. And I could send you this, by the way. I don't know if you post videos or whatever, but if you want to use this, you can. But yeah, Erica's right. Like this stuff, there are issues with unions and stuff too. Like people on the
Well,
left,
she has a point there.
people on
I
the
mean,
left do think unions are some type of like are automatically a fix. They aren't really automatically a fix. A lot of things people on the left would complain about when it comes to immigrants and stuff. Unions were very anti-immigrant because they did see immigrants coming in as lowering the value of of their labor. But that's a different conversation. Anyway, I need to talk to somebody about some Confederate
okay,
statues. So thank you for coming on.
no problem.
The
You're
first
welcome.
ever,
Thanks for having
actually,
me.
the the best Tom McDonald fan so far to come on here for a conversation.
Hangover
Um,
gang forever.